like to begin our program with an invocation by Reverend Maud Robinson, Assistant Minister of the First Parish of Bedford. Reverend Robinson.
As a recent blow-in to Bedford from Ireland, I was very honoured to be asked to do the invocation at this morning's event. And what I asked myself, am I supposed to be invoking? And I think the thing to be invoked is the spirit of Bedford, shown in the great turnout today, and obviously the spirit of all the neighbouring towns as seen in your wonderful Minutemen companies. I've had great pleasure in living amongst the spirit of Bedford since September, and I found it a unique and special community spirit. And I've no doubt that this evolved in some degree from the colonial and revolutionary spirit of days gone by. That spirit which helped to usher in a nation of freedom and democracy is no less needed now, as your nation and our world faces many challenges. Coming from a country which much more recently than yours claimed its freedom as a nation, I closely identify with the pride, but also the responsibility of being part of a nation among nations. Despite our difference in size, at our best we have in common a nature which looks outwards, encompassing our whole global village, and an appreciation of our place as one nation among many, which ultimately will thrive only if all nations thrive. The community spirit of this place is well exemplified by the number of you gathered here today, turning out to support your neighbours in celebrating the past and in looking to the future. This is what we would wish of our global village. Worldwide community can only spring from strong and compassionate communities in towns and cities of every nation, caring enough to think globally and act locally. That injunction has never been more necessary than at this time in our world's history, as we face common challenges of ecological degradation, unequal consumption of the world's limited resources, and conflict in so many parts of the world, caused by intolerance and greed. In each small community, in every corner of the world, it is our moral obligation to think globally and to use our freedom and democracy to further the aims of communication among those who think differently from ourselves. As we remember the courageous deeds from the past in the quest for freedom, my prayer for this community of Bedford and surrounding towns is that all of us might remind ourselves to maintain that spirit of freedom and democracy, and to work that people in all nations might also experience it. May the year ahead be full of blessings for each person here today and in the wider world. Amen.
People have been gathering here every April since 1965 to raise and cap the Liberty Pole. I've overheard people saying, what an odd thing to do. Is it a signal that Bedford used in 1775 to announce that the British are coming? And why here, on a funny little traffic island? In 1775, it would not have been an odd thing at all. And some of you would have been wearing red caps as well. For years, the Sons of Liberty in Boston and surrounding towns had been meeting under their own liberty trees and liberty poles to protest taxes, organize boycotts, and tar and featherings and tea parties. It's not clear whether Bedford actually had a pole, though it did enthusiastically take part in the boycotts. Our pole is raised today for all the patriots who were determined to resist oppression, and we are grateful that our brother and sister towns are here today. What makes this a liberty pole is the red cap that Brian will soon plant atop it. It is an obscure reference to ancient history. It seems that in ancient Roman and Greek times, When a slave was granted freedom, he or she would be presented with a red Phrygian cap. In colonial America, that cap was meant to be a slap in the face to the British Crown. We are slaves to no tyrant king. It was later taken up by the French revolutionists, and to this day, several South American countries have a liberty cap on their flags. In the 1700s, a huge oak tree grew right here. Most of the Bedford militia and Minutemen would have had to pass right under it on a way to Concord on April 19th. Companies of Minutemen from other towns would pass here too, perhaps leaving their horses at the taverns on their way. One who stayed behind on that day recorded that she heard the Bedford bell ringing endlessly all day, and people raced to and fro, especially women desperate for news, preparing food, rolling cartridges that they feared their men would need, and eagerly watching for messengers who could tell the news of how the battles were going at Lexington and Concord and along the battle road. Here too passed the sad cortege of men who brought home the body of their captain, and desperately wounded Joe Blaine, who took a ball in his leg and it later had to be amputated. 2 more men died in the camps at Cambridge. And coming home at last, the long-awaited militia and Minutemen themselves, who, in a moment, had changed the world and set it on an entirely new course. We are the heirs to those who risked the belief that they could make the world better. We tell their story year after year, stand at this crossroads, and gaze down the very roads they took. Let us, like them, take up the dare to make this world better, not bearing muskets but ideas, and wearing a red cap, proclaiming that we too are no slaves to injustice and oppression, but free to act and think. We know that action or inaction will change our world forever.
The rules of the king no longer!
And for the second time, Cornet Brian Hash has successfully